Afternoon, everybody. Welcome to the August 14th, 2025 Assembly Rules Committee meeting. We're on the calendar from 1 to 3 p.m. It's now 1:04 p.m. We'll start with introductions. Ms. Baldwin-Day.
Erin Baldwin-Day.
Jared Kirker.
Daniel Volant.
Anna Brawley.
Christopher Constant.
Yarrow Silvers.
On the phone, Mr. Martinez.
Present.
Thank you, Mr. Myers.
Yes, thanks, Chair.
We're also joined by the mayor, legislative services team, the ombudsman is back. We have municipal assembly, we have assembly council. And so we don't have a packed agenda today. I'm sure we'll figure out a way to use the time. I don't have a ton to report on right now, other than I think that we are in the lull right now. The budget process is about to begin, and the tempo of our meetings will start to ramp up toward the end of the year. And so that's really just enjoy the kind of bandwidth that you have right now, as we are warning you that your bandwidth is about to be consumed. So for the new members, now is the interlude before the big symphony begins. So that's really my report, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Chris. Hello, everybody. I wanted to start by thanking you all for your unanimous approval of the ordinance for rehabilitation for housing, that tax incentive. Very much appreciated and appreciate your support, and especially Vice Chair Brawley. Anna, thank you so much for your collaboration on the S version. Really feels good to have that in place. I know that Municipal Manager Wynn Pearson gave a report in my absence on Tuesday. We, as I think you know, were hosting a number of dignitaries and guests, and actually I was at the Coast Guard Awards banquet that night. Lots going on in Anchorage this week for sure, especially during the congressional recess. And just to reiterate that, we met with members of the delegation, the Secretary of Transportation, Sean Duffy, and I know that Aaron and Zach and Chris, you were there for that meeting and tour at the port. And Chris, you mentioned Tuesday that the belugas were out. That was really, that was pretty awesome. Very cool. Wanted to also mention that in anticipation of the meeting between the president and the Russian president on Friday, we are ready. The municipal team has been coordinating out of the municipal manager's office. And so we have had communication with the White House, with the governor's office, and our partners on JBER. Also wanted to note that the 2025 MOA employee survey will launch in the next few weeks. And thanks to this body for getting that in place. I understand that was led by former Vice Chair Zelatel and member Martinez. So good to be moving forward on that. I know that's been a long-standing desire for this body going back a number of years to have an employee engagement survey and exit interviews. And so exit interviews are in place as well too. And then finally, it was really great to be at the first University Lunch and Learn yesterday. Thanks to all who have been working together to get those events in place. And I know Aaron and Daniel were there as well. And thank you, Claire and Allie and Jennifer, for all your work coordinating. That's about it for me right now, if there are any questions or anything, but thanks, Chris. Appreciate the opportunity to give a report.
I will underscore, there weren't just belugas. It was like belugas you have not seen in numbers before. They were just popping up, I think, by the 100 out there. It was an extraordinary thing to see. Some really close, some far out. I would add one last thing. We are on a countdown toward the 20th of having delivery of the 2023 ACFR, the Consolidated Financial Report for the municipality, and everybody's got their fingers crossed and working diligently to get that document across the line in the time that we need it to be across the line. And then we'll immediately pivot into the 2024 audit. And that's kind of underway already in some ways, but that's, I think, a pretty important piece of information for this group to hear. So, okay, then next we'll have reports from the clerk
Thank you, Chair. Nothing from us.
and from the ombudsman. Anything?
Thanks, Chris. As most of you are aware, our deputy ombudsman, May Ramirez-Zhang, after 10 years in the ombudsman's office, has accepted the position of risk manager for the state of Alaska. So Heather McAlpine, the associate ombudsman, has accepted the position of deputy ombudsman. And she and I are plugging away in the office. I think we have 8 open cases right now. We're closing in on our 900th contact for the year. So we're on target for 14 or 1500 contacts again this year. And we will be posting for the associate ombudsman position in the near future. So if you know any good candidates, let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, Assembly Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I would just like to report that our legal intern we had for this summer, Zachary Christie, his last day is tomorrow. This work he's actually working remotely his last weekend. We were just thankful to have him. I think he said he had a good experience with us, and we appreciated his help and having the opportunity to mold some young legal minds. Anyways, I also have our productivity report if you want me to read off the numbers, so we can skip it.
Anyone skip it?
Okay, thank you.
All right, next, Legislative Services.
We have been very busy with the 50th anniversary of municipality and so celebrations. And so Allie is going to present on that in a minute. I'll skip that part over. We've also had Allie has experimented with doing some deep dives in our email newsletter and changing up the schedule for that. Want to remind you that after each assembly meeting, she emails all assembly members and offers you a chance to give your own 2 cents to be added to the newsletter. And I think a lot of you do that and encourage you to do that. It's a great way to, easy way to have a personal touch with your constituents. And then Michaela Wilson, who is on a contract in our office doing communications, has reached out to all of you. Please follow up with her if you would like some extra help on your individual communications. We are going to be refreshing this room this fall. We're going to get the walls repainted mid-October and get new furniture and then get the carpet clean. I think they skipped us last year when they cleaned the carpet, so we'll get that done. So hopefully this room will be a little more functional. As you can see, we've been experimenting with different configurations, but hopefully we'll make it a little more functional and a little less messy. And then finally, with Michaela, we are working on a training for legislative aides, our little local Muni 101 presentation that we'll invite to the state, the people who work for the state legislature, so they can understand a little bit more about local government. And that is it for us.
All right, so that just concludes the reports in general. So we'll dive right into the alcohol tax overview.
All right, that is me. I'm going to pull up the website. All right, let's see. There's so much to tell you about the alcohol tax. I've been putting in some plugs and sending you information throughout the summer, but as budget time comes up, you'll need to make some decisions on alcohol tax spending. The mayor's office will be sending their proposal, but the assembly can always make amendments. Over the past couple of years, some assembly members were a little bit frustrated with the process and thinking that too much money was going to downstream things and not enough towards prevention. And so created a contract to come up with a strategic plan for how the alcohol tax is spent, which has been done. It's a very big document, but part of that process, we created this 4-pager that's right before you. That's the, what do they call those? Cliff notes for the assembly members, so that you don't have to read, the experts can read the big document, and this is something that you can work with. And so on the back of that, there's an annual evaluation discussion guide. So I'm going to lead you through the resources that you'll need to know about in order to have a productive discussion. And then we'll see if you want to have the discussion today or schedule that for another time. We'll just see how people are feeling. But I have before you pulled up the Cheers Anchorage website. It's called cheersanchorage.org. So this is a really great one-stop shop for all things alcohol tax. I have the homepage pulled up right now, so it's got some of the history about it. And then if you go to the About section and scroll to the bottom, this is where we have that big strategic plan I told you about, this 4-page document, some of the assemblies, resolutions on it, and other information that is helpful background on it. Then if you go to the funding page, there's a pie chart here that we update each year that has the overall spending color-coded by categories. And then we have this tracker, which has been updated as of last year, and you can click on a subject and see what the money got spent on, who it went to, how much was spent. I believe this is using budget to actual, so these are final numbers. A lot of the alcohol tax, there's some pretty big differences between appropriations and budget. Over the years, a lot of money got appropriated for different things, but not spent out. And so then last year, there was a lot of money carried. I think last year's budget was quite large. There's a lot of money carried over. Or maybe that's the 2025 budget that's large, 24. And so now it's down to, I think, the normal amount, which is about 14 or 15 million a year. But this gives you all of the previous budget documents so you can see how it's been spent over time. And then I compile this document spending by year, which I will open up. And so this is color coded. And I think the thing I want to really draw your attention to is this brown part is money spent on homelessness. Yellowish green is public safety. So that goes to the law departments. I think some training for police, maybe some for fire as well. And then this green section is the child abuse, sexual assault, and domestic violence prevention work. Blue is administration. Of course, that was pretty big the first year, and now that's gone down to just a pretty tiny sliver each year. But you can see that how money spent on homelessness is a pretty big chunk of that. And that money spent on the prevention was pretty big the first year and has gone down considerably. The mental health and substance misuse has been a tiny sliver and is non-existent this year. And then if you flip through this document, I have the budgets, just kind of the shorthand version of the budget each year with the category, who got the money, a little bit of a description of what the money went towards and how much. It looks like, so this is 2025. So this is what was budgeted in 25. For previous years, I used the actuals. So I'm now that I'm on the spot, I can't guarantee it, but I'm pretty sure that these are the actual numbers in that column. And then at the bottom is the totals that I used to make that chart on the front. Then I'm going to pull up. Oh, yeah.
Just a follow-up question on that. When you say actuals, do you mean actuals meaning that funds have actually been appropriated? Okay.
Spent.
Actually spent.
Yep. So
not
this
just
first,
appropriated, but spent.
Yep.
Okay,
So
great.
this first year, this first page is the 2025 budget. So I'm not keeping that up to date. I just entered the budget at the beginning of the year. But I'm fairly certain, even though I use the word, I'm not a CPA, so sometimes I use the wrong words.
So hold on, I had a couple of folks in the queue, so since we stopped for a minute, we'll go for
Okay,
that.
but let me finish that. So even though I do have the word budgeted, I'm pretty sure that is actual spending. But you can confirm by going back to this funding page, and I have the 24 actuals, and that's what I get in about April of the next year. And that stuff is not audited, but is pretty final. It's what they give to the auditors.
All right, yeah. Daniel. Yeah, I would know. Mr. Presford joined us this right now at 1:18.
Yeah, this is a great discussion as we sort of move along, we prepare for the budget process and put together our sort of resolution about, our values and what we want to see reflected in the budget, which I think Anna's working on. So when I was first elected and we were going through the alcohol tax process, one of the things that I learned and I thought might be helpful just briefly to touch on for the newer members are there is in code when this passed restrictions around being duplicative of general government spending. So is that something that either maybe Claire, you could touch on or council could touch on?
I will probably throw it to council to give the exact definition, but it is in code and it's stuff it's programs that existed the year the alcohol tax was in place. So maybe council can give more on that.
Sorry, so going from memory, and it's in our charter, it was in the proposition that any alcohol spending needs to be for new programs or service levels above what was in place at the time in 2020. And so this must be additional services that the municipality didn't provide or levels of service. So maybe it's the same service, but additional stuff being provided by the alcohol tax. And so the alcohol tax can't be used to supplant what was already being provided by the municipality at 2020 and before. If that answers the question.
Yeah, that does. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Ms. Brawley.
Yeah, thanks. Just a couple points. One is, if you can go back to the slides, because I think I can put some color on the 2021 budget, that chart where you had the different share of the buckets. Yeah, so I think so in 2021, that was the first year the funds were collected, obviously, and there was a lot of effort to get money out the door. I was involved in that as a contractor back in the day, not to get the money, but to help get it out the door. I think what's happening there and why the administration is higher is because actually the total is smaller. And that's partly what started creating that big fund balance. So when you're looking at that, it's not 15 million in that same chart, and that's why the percentages look like they're off, because I think so there was relatively more to prevention because there was a bunch of grants that went out the door. Anyway, just to say, so you should look at the total spent in 2021 because it's going to be smaller than 2022. And then conversely, part of the reason the homelessness bucket is so high or the proportion is because when we were spending up to 20 or 24 million in a year of unspent money from previous years or reappropriated money, then that makes it look a lot bigger. So it's still true that most of it has gone to homelessness spending, whether it's shelter, housing, a whole bunch of things in that bucket. I think that's mainly what I wanted to say. So I think, just going into this budget thing, I think I've said this every year, is at some point we're going to not have fund balance anymore because we are actually using all the money that's been appropriated. And so we're in that spot in 2025. So if you look at the budget, it's using the 2025 money pretty much only. I don't know if we're going to be underspent on anything. We'll get, that's things that we look at in the Budget and Finance Committee, but I think the working assumption at this point should be there is no fund balance there, that it really is thinking about what are we bringing in for 2026 that goes out the door. So just to say we've been in a different budgeting posture in prior years.
Couple folks in the queue, and I'll put you on the
Can I
list.
just make one comment on
Go ahead.
that? Just looking at this, yes, it looks like we spent 23 million in 24 and then have budgeted 16 million or almost 17 million for 25.
Yeah, and in 21, it was closer to 6 to 7 million. And so two things on that slide and that conversation, we have to be careful how we talk about housing because housing often gets bunched into homelessness as a broader category. And sometimes housing is used as a specific program relating to homelessness, but some of those investments were broader housing efforts. And so I just want folks to know that we need to be really careful when we're talking about those things. And so second, I would really appreciate if your team would develop some comms around the purpose of the funds, the dedications that the charter language has and the why, because we get these very heated and irrational emails that say, we've approved the alcohol tax to solve the homeless problem, period. And a lot of people don't see past that. And the reality is the first time when it was strictly homelessness on the charter, on the proposal, it failed. And when we add those other elements, it succeeded. And so I think there is a communication effort that would be valuable around the why it's not all for homelessness and why, because that is something that is deeply embedded into the imagination of those who don't really understand what we're doing. So I think that would be very helpful to figure out a way to communicate that, maybe provide some tools, maybe even a page on the website that we could refer to people to when we get those emails, so we don't have to say it or type it. We can say, hey, we really thought about this and here's the why. It is how it is. Be helpful. Yara?
Well,
Oh,
can I
go
make
ahead.
a couple comments
Sure.
on that first? I'm going to also walk you through a survey was done for the alcohol tax strategic plan about 2 years ago. So I'm going to walk you through that because that really tells you the current temperature of or 2 years temperature, what people want to spend money on. And then for the homelessness, I think it almost all goes to shelter from, if you look on the budget line by line, as far as I know, that is the next step pilot program maybe is housing, but it looks like the rest of it shelter as far as I can tell.
Right. So that again, when I said be careful about using the term housing, it's like they get conglomerated into the conversation about homelessness. And what you're saying is no, there was no funding for housing per se here. And so that is diagnostic of an issue of itself too, right? If we're looking at upstream and trying to resolve problems. So, yeah.
Just to put a finer point on the question that Member Boland asked earlier, the programs that we're funding out of the alcohol tax are not necessarily new as of 2020. It's the fact that the municipality is funding them that is new. So a lot of the grants that we're funding, and I don't know which ones specifically, but like we're funding Awake and STAR, WIC, some of the grants were actually paid for by the state. And then the municipality took those over, paying for them. So the programs aren't new, but the fact that we're paying for them is new.
All right. Aaron. Ms. Baldwin Day.
I was actually just curious about the 2025 balance of allocations. I don't know if you can go back to the bar chart slide with the percentages. I'm curious about, it looks like mental health and substance misuse is a teensy slice, if any, of the pie for 2025. And I'm curious about that. If anyone can speak to that, whether that's you or others on the body.
I can't speak to Mona, but I can say that for sure there was no money spent in 2025 on mental health and substance misuse.
I don't know. Go ahead, Ms. Anna.
Yeah. Yeah, and I know I'm not the keeper of the alcohol tax, but I know that was a discussion, and I know one of the big partners, one of my former employers by contract was Recover Alaska. And there was certainly a discussion about keeping the nexus with, we're talking about alcohol, so can we deal with alcohol misuse? So there was some advocacy. So it's a relatively small bucket. I can't say that there was a reason why it wasn't funded before, but that I guess it was starting maybe in 23, actually, even though it shows some in 22, was a push to have some funding. So VOA got some funding for residential treatment for youth, and then there was a suicide prevention funding. Anyway, there were some small pieces. Oh yeah, the province. Yeah, and so there were some other members besides me who ran amendments on those, but it is definitely proportionally smaller. Part of it was because there was so much focus on doing upstream prevention work, which falls in the child abuse bucket, to say if you teach kids to read, they are less likely to enter jail later. For example, there's a whole body of evidence around that. So it's also like looking at what's funding versus what these particular buckets were trying to address. It's not always completely clear, but there is a chain of logic there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, and so I think it's also important to realize that some of these buckets really overlap. So when I'm looking at this in public safety, well, we've done a lot to support the mobile crisis team via the alcohol tax, and that's probably in that public safety bucket, but really that is a mental health crisis response team, right? So some of it falls in multiple buckets. And then I love the 4-pager here, but I also do hope that colleagues will look through the fuller plan, because I think it does provide some really good guidance about like thinking more expansively about what could fit into these buckets, such as early literacy or after school childcare. And, that could be an upstream thing to prevent public safety issues. So yeah, I think there's a lot of ways to get creative within the intent of the alcohol tax that voters approved.
I'll add that one other confounding variable here is that the voters approved the ACE fund in 2024. And so we had a number of funded priorities that were under the marijuana tax fund for 2024, and things are just in that flow of transition now. So the ACE fund monies were pulled and going into other priorities, the youth, the early education. And so in some ways, these graphs, separate from all the other pools, are a little missing kind of what's really happening. So these are just by the one source at this time. Erin?
Yeah, I actually have a follow-up question to that, because I mean, I think the intent of the marijuana tax and the ACE fund is fantastic, and also it is woefully insufficient to actually address the need for childcare and early childhood education for Anchorage's workforce. And so I guess I just want us to be mindful of the fact that the ACE fund is not going to supplant, and it will not have the volume of funding that it needs. And I hope that we don't assume that the ACE fund is going to be able to absorb what may have been part of the alcohol tax bucket, because I don't think that's realistic. And in fact, the ACE fund is not going to be robust enough to accomplish a lot of the goals that were set for it. So I think in terms of workforce development, in terms of economic stability for families, and in terms of prevention, there's going to need to be, I think, a both and solution, in my opinion.
Well, I would just offer welcome to government, where there's not enough money, local government in particular, to solve the problems we have. And just, I think members who weren't here when those funds weren't available for childcare, will see, a missing element. But really, this is the first year where the money has been available for those things. And so, yeah, it's a hard pill to swallow when all of our funding partners from on high are receding from their commitments and not doing their damn job, which we had a long discussion about Tuesday night. And so this is our fate, our lot. Dean?
Thank you. I just wanted to add, since there was mention of the marijuana tax not being, I guess, enough, thought the charter allows the assembly to increase from the 5% rate up to 10%. So a limitation on how much each time, except that also locked in no increase until June 30th, 2028. So I guess from the current 5%, it could be increased to 6% after that date. 2028 though, so that's in the charter. If you want to add more money to it.
Yeah, so I mean, the gist of that is no room to grow right now. So unless we cut, which is the purview of the assembly. Other members on this discussion? You want to continue? Is there more? Okay, go ahead.
Okay, the next slide I have up is the 2025 budget, which is really small. We don't need to look at it in too much detail. Just want you all to know where to find it and to look at it before you're making budget decisions. There are a number of groups. This was a big discussion over the years and during the creation of the plan. There's a number of groups that get direct grants from the alcohol tax. They're not competitive. They just are line item in there every year. To Awake, STAR, Victims for Justice. And so that's always a debate, how much should go to a named entity versus how much goes to the health department to do competitive grants. So I think that's something that should be on your radar to think about for 2026. I suppose it's also the case with some of the homelessness funding as well. So that's something to pay attention to. Then next, I have the annual report section right here under the impact stories. So this page has the first annual tax report. You passed legislation this spring to require, or last winter to require, a report every year. So that is here. It was given to the assembly in April. And this shows you how the money was spent in 2024 by each department. It has some of the financial numbers, but then it also has some of the impacts and results from the grantees. So pay attention to that. And then finally on that page, there's this pink section, how do people feel about the tax, and the survey results. And then so the survey is right here. So I also encourage you to read that. It's getting a little outdated now. I think it was done in December 2023, but to me had some really interesting findings. Number one, people seem to be really supportive of the tax. Even if they didn't know what it went for, they were supportive. And then once they found out what it went for, they support increased in most categories. And then it also gives some, it tests some issues versus against each other to see which ones people are most supportive of using for funding. So that's kind of where to find all of the background information. And then next, going through this annual evaluation discussion guide, I think what really came out of the strategic plan is that there should be a discussion. It shouldn't just be blindly passing it or one member making an amendment here or there. There should be a bigger discussion of what are the assembly, what are the city's goals for the alcohol tax? Are we meeting those goals? What did we do? Like, not just look at it in a vacuum, but what did we do the last couple of years? What are the results of that funding? And just try to make more strategic decisions rather than just doing the same thing every year. Or if you do decide to spend more, I don't think anyone ever thought it should be a third and a third and a third of how the money is allocated. But I think that if you do decide to allocate a big chunk to one category, it should be kind of a conscious decision and discussed amongst there should be an agreement, not just like looking back at the last year. Oh, whoops, we didn't, we spent a lot in that one category that we didn't want to. So that is what this discussion guide is to help you do. And I guess I'll throw it back to the body to see if you want to set up a session to actually work through this, or if it's something you want to work through on your own and then come back and have a conversation. How would you all like to approach this process?
I will just offer, if no one wants to chime in, that this is all part of the broader budget process that we're going through right now. And so it should fit in the context of the various meetings that are starting to be scheduled and planned out as we move from the 120-day letter into action. And so, and I would offer that I also believe in the context of that resolution and discussion with the administration on what our priorities are, that we should have them in the room for the discussion. And probably it's Thea that would be needed to be there for that, or Thea and Ona, to ensure that as much as possible, we have these discussions before we get to a final budget book and find ourselves in a position of conflict, because we very well could lose that process just by inertia and the fact that the introduced budget will come from the administration. And so be in front of it is the point. I don't think we should do that alone, though. Anna.
Yeah, just briefly, I was going to give this update later, but I'll just say it now. So on the priorities resolution, we had a work session on it in July. We're working to get a draft to bring to the August 21st Budget and Finance Committee. And the proposal right now is to look back to one that we did a couple years ago and really update it. So not just say copy paste, you know, what the priorities are. But in that one from a couple years ago, I don't believe we made any statements about the alcohol tax, but certainly we can have, like, you know, a priority or a set of priorities for alcohol tax, for marijuana tax, and of course marijuana tax, recognizing the ACE Fund Board, that's also their purview to make recommendations. So just be thinking about that if you're able to come to the committee next week. And then if there's appetite for it, especially if a lot of folks can't be at that 21st meeting, we could still do a work session on it. The intent is to put it on the September 9th agenda, so we have some time. So, and it will be after the 120-day memo comes out. So we'll have kind of a high level view of what the administration's thinking as well. So that's just for timing and for your information.
Others on that? Aaron?
Yeah, I would definitely appreciate having a more specific conversation with the body and with the administration present. So I think my answer to your question, Claire, is yes, please, let's do that.
Okay, that's the answer.
I'll work with the budget and finance chairs to figure, and for Matt Farina to figure out how to do that.
All right. Is that about it? Okay, next then we'll pivot to the briefing on the Anchorage 50th anniversary celebration unification, which is going to be Ally.
And while we wait for everything to come up, oh, great. Hi, everyone. Allie Hartman for the record. This, I pulled this up during the conversation because it's a visual aid that represents the color of money. You might all remember that great presentation from Lance Wilbur. And this here shows, I gotta multitask here for a little bit. Interestingly, kind of just the makeup of municipal revenue. And I just wanted to highlight that when we talk about special taxes, you're looking at the alcohol tax and the marijuana tax, which visually in the scheme of the municipal revenue picture is just really interesting that it makes up just that little amount. But moving on to the 50th anniversary celebration. We have been working hard in legislative services alongside the mayor's office and many partners to pull together a celebration of the municipality's 50th anniversary. The municipality was founded in 1975 through a merger of the city of Anchorage and the greater Anchorage area borough. And so 75 years is not that long as a city, as a municipality. That has not been very long at all. And so this is a great opportunity to reflect on our first 50 years while also inviting the community to imagine what the next 50 years could look like. The anniversary celebration, forgive me because I left my notes over here, so I'm going to reference them. The anniversary celebration is between the municipality and many partners. You know, in 1974, 1975, 1976, a whole bunch of groups were starting and being founded. So there are lots of organizations that are celebrating their 50th as well. And we've really envisioned the celebration to be not just about local government, but to be about our community of communities and the many folks that have had a hand in shaping this place. So to highlight a couple of specific things, I've got the website up as a bit of a backdrop. This is www.muni.org/50. It's also accessible from the very top of the municipal homepage. And it's really the center point for all of the different programs, events, activities, histories, archives that we are pulling together. So to start, I want to highlight a couple of cool ways that we're capturing our history. The first is a series of essays called History Takes that are from notable neighbors that are contributing elements of the municipality's history and really narrating those. This first one was written in-house within legislative services. Jennifer took the lead on this one in consultation with local historian David Reamer. And we wanted to launch the History Take series with something that, in short, described what is unification, what are we celebrating, the 50th anniversary, what is that? And this has so much cool fodder. So like this, the clerk's office found, this is the original charter as signed in 1975, all scanned in, super cool. Then there's a memo about the government overlap between the city of Anchorage and the borough, which is fascinating. So like June 1975, this is so cool. Lots of neat ways for you to dive in and learn more about the history, but also a place for us to archive all this and save it in perpetuity in a way that's presented to the public. So this is just the first of a few essays that we have on our history. Our next is coming from the surviving charter commissioners, Lisa Parker, Jane Anvik, and Joe Josephson. And we also have one that's almost ready to send around the tax cap and how that came to be, which is interesting. Then municipal departments are also sharing their own department histories. So for our very own branch, the municipal clerk's office, founded in 1920, even farther or earlier than the municipality itself. And so great to get cool pictures of the first city council in Anchorage, right?
Everybody,
yeah.
maybe we should try to set some kind of a dress code for the meeting on the 26th.
Yeah, that picture, totally.
Yeah, I think we should, do something.
I just want to
Yeah.
note the clerk is there too. He's that fourth one. So just throwing that out there.
Clerk Bokey. Ben Bokey.
No, Ben Bokey comes later.
Oh, this isn't Clerk Bokey?
Anchorage or Alaska is long known for its family dynasties.
So Ben Bokey's that's that photo.
Oh,
right there.
this one. Oh, I thought they were the same. Okay. There we go. This is Ben Bokey.
Joseph Conroy was the very first. He was also the
So-
highest paid employee.
Now we're getting into the jazz.
Yeah.
Dan Coffey is still alive. That was his mom there who was the first clerk of the municipality. So we might want to reach out to Dan. He's not,
I think we determined they actually aren't.
oh, really?
Yeah,
Fascinating.
he's
Okay.
from somewhere else.
Okay.
Yeah, we traced it down.
Well, that makes sense.
So lots of cool history, and there's more where that came from. 17 departments submitted, and we've only got 2 up. The fire department's history was also actually we have 3 up, but lots of really good stuff to learn about in the municipality's history. So that's just one piece. We've got histories. We've got events, a huge events calendar, starting with the University series. The first University session was held yesterday. These are organized by the mayor's office to lead up to the community kickoff in early September. And that's when a lot of those community focused events are happening. And we'll continue to archive and save all of the event recordings that we have and pull them into the website. So if you missed yesterday's, you can find it on AIM Community Works on Facebook, or if you wait a moment or two, we'll have it loaded up on the website and we can send you all a note.
So Anna,
First, thank you so much. I think we should all thank staff for all of your work at Legislative Services. And more to come. It'll be awesome. So I encourage everybody to participate. But specifically yesterday, I just got to listen on the phone. I think it was a really interesting discussion, and it was recorded, it sounds like, so we can watch it. But I would also point folks back to, and it's in our emails, there was an email from Marie Husa inviting everybody, and it had a PDF attached of a brochure that was used to basically educate folks about what this was. And it's so interesting to look back at what people cared about at that time. So I'll just highlight a couple, but go back and look at it. One is the whole meetings ending at midnight. That was a whole section in there. So clearly that was an issue, this whole 3 a.m. thing, and people were, upset about it. And then the other one is, if you look, it talks a lot about how you can kind of read between the lines and see how frustrated the public was with having 2 governments, or just having a bunch of different people that they were supposed to talk to. Because it goes through and it says, you're not talking to 2 governments, you're talking to one. Like, it's really selling the efficiency and that piece of it. Anyway, it's interesting to really look at that and read between the lines of the reason it was called out is because it was a big topic of discussion and what they saw as a big selling point. So I really encourage folks to look back at the brochure. It's super interesting.
so I recognize it's a work in progress, but it would be nice as we get closer to the 26th to do a 1-page calendar that has everything as much as possible on it, because I'm not able to track through this website what's happening when, and it would be nice. And I think probably a lot of people would benefit from like a what's coming next, Thanks.
Yep, that's in the works, along with lots of other pieces of collateral. We've got like a 2-page, 4-pager around our history that we'll be giving out at all of these events. Lots of tabling, lots of cool stuff going on.
So another question, and I think maybe a quick review by the clerk back to the 1975 agendas. It might be kind of fun to do some kind of a agenda for the 26th that has like a historic feel that people can have, like when we're doing that meeting.
So I have the minutes from that meeting when they
Uh-huh.
actually established like the clerk and went over the election. So we do have those minutes, and I've provided them to Ally.
Let's look at an agenda from
I can
that
look, yeah.
time and see if we might be able to create like a
A throwback
stylized
agenda?
agenda that's like a program for the night.
Yeah, I can look into it.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm sure there are fonts that can do that. And so anyhow, just some thoughts. We're now starting to talk about ways to make the 26th really sing.
Yeah, that brings me to kind of where we're at today and what we need from you all to make this a smashing success, as we know it will be. But you're a very important part of that. And so that is these last pieces of engagement, right? We've got these events, but we want the community to feel included and invited, whether they can come to an event or not. So we have a number of ways for them to play and to engage with the community, and we want to see themselves reflected in the way that we celebrate our 50th. First, I'd like to highlight a really cool project that Claire's been working on, and that's called the Neighborhood Time Machine. Claire's worked with 10 locations from Eagle River to Girdwood to have installed in those prominent kind of community-based locations maps that take us back in time to that area of a certain period. And so that's coming online this August. There will be some kind of like passport program so that you can go visit them and check them out. But that'll be really cool. And it'll be a part of the story that we tell as we wrap things up here this winter. And then the second piece and the immediate call to action for you all is hidden gems. You all supplied a list of beautiful places in your districts for our intern to go take pictures of. I'll be following up with those photos. We got some really great pictures from each district. And I think that those are great examples of hidden gems in your communities, places that maybe go overlooked or people don't, take the time to really appreciate. We're crowdsourcing a list of Anchorage's hidden gems, and we'll end up with a top 10 of sorts that then we use as the basis for a scavenger hunt type program to bring families and members of the community in. So would love for you to submit your hidden gems so that we are getting good responses from that. And then also please do share it with your networks. Would love to have your support in amplifying that opportunity.
Daniel?
Thank you. Okay, I want to point out something what I think is cool, and maybe you guys will think it's cool too. And then a crazy idea for the next 50 years. Nope. This won't be on you guys at all. Well, maybe that's not true, but okay. So the pattern there in the blue, and then also the MOA 50 logo, those were born out of a project that is going on right now. It's the Downtown Wayfinding Project. And if you all recall, we put that on the road bond a couple years ago, I think it was. And there's all kinds of cool signage that's going to be coming to downtown, incorporating that simplified municipal logo, because they wanted it to be really visible and clear from far away as you're walking down the street for the signage, and then incorporating Athabascan indigenous motifs as well. So it's going to be really, really colorful. It'll tell people, go this way to the museum. And so anyway, I think it's just a fantastic project. And so here's my crazy idea. I love the updated logo, and I think we might want to consider at some point making that our municipal seal instead of the current one, because the current one, there's a lot of jazz going on. And if you look at it on your little placard, if it's not in color, right, it's like, what am I looking at here? There's a ship and a plane and all kinds of stuff. So I just want to put that idea out there. That's my crazy idea. Okay, thank you.
Some who predate me would warn of a meat grinder that the assembly has just proposed running into. However, I think that maybe it's time for the meat grinder. We'll see. It's not a terrible idea. So just be warned that those footprints have been trod before, and it's a right idea with a challenging process. So.
The last thing on my list is pointing to the next assembly meeting where you all will take up a recognition resolution celebrating the 50th, and looking at leadership here. As a recognition resolution, there will be a moment for that, and we're thinking about ways to make that moment really special.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the question is so 26, we'll have the resolution, it got submitted. I think we put out the call to everybody to sign on if you want. And then we're just brainstorming like what is feasible to do, because we're talking 12 days from now, but also what would be fun. So also if people want to volunteer for the extremely ad hoc short-term planning committee for that, meaning you'll just put some time into this. We'd welcome the help. But I think the question is, so the ideas we've had are dressing in costume or like the dressing retro, recreating that photo, doing the old timey font. And I mean, all these are doable, but just to say, what do folks want to do? What do you want to do in a couple weeks at that meeting?
So, yeah, proposals of temporary mustaches and TikTok dances have been talked about around the table. I don't know that that's where we'll go, but anyhow, so we'll run that through legislative services. They can kind of help to massage those ideas. We aren't going to solve them here. Other things for this? That's it? Okay, so then the next part of our agenda, thank you for that. And it's coming to the point. It's kind of amazing. About 2 years ago, a group of us sat in this room discussing this, and it's nice to see it come around finally. So the next item on the agenda is updates on assembly business. And this is your opportunity. And since you're sitting over there on that far left, Mr. Presverdia, Cameron, you get to start.
Yahoo! Yeah, nothing to share today. Thanks.
Right, Aaron?
Yeah, I think that there's been some conversation about, ongoing conversation about the 1.3 million that was suggested to be reappropriated to shelter as opposed to housing rehabilitation. It was with the Anchorage Affordable Housing and Land Trust, Housing Land Trust. I think I got that right. And as we've been talking more about vacant and abandoned properties and rehabilitation and things like that, and how we take advantage of the housing stock that we already have that might still be habitable. I've been really interested in thinking through how do we put that 1.3 million to work in a strategic way and in a way that is accessible to individual members of the public, not just entities, not just larger like developers or corporations. And so anyway, wanted to put it out before the rest of you that that's work that I'm interested in from a variety of angles and would be, I would just love to know who else is interested in working on that kind of thing. I think there are a couple of you that have expressed interest, but that seems like an important thing to sort of chase down is what is that 1.3 million for rehabilitation and housing rehabilitation going to go towards, and how are we going to organize that? So that's,
I'm going to offer that the administration and I have been working on that. And so I beware that there might not be a ton of room around that, but what would be better is to join that project than to try to start something new, because the agreement for the postpone indefinitely was laden with a number of conversations about how we're going to proceed and the goal getting money for those reuse of vacant and abandoned properties. But happy to have you join.
yeah, I think I chatted, I got a little bit of a rundown from Nolan about part of that conversation, but not the whole thing. So yeah, would love to
And I
check in
think
about that.
closer, it's Ona and myself. We were
Great.
kind of wrestling through some of those ideas.
Okay.
So,
Super.
Right.
Apart from that, I don't think I have anything else to raise at this. Oh, quick update on the transit supportive development overlay, which I think is germane because it has been now at PZC once, and we are in the process of convening some citizens assemblies to hear more from the public about that that ordinance. There will be a second PZC hearing. So if you all could support in making sure that your community councils are tracking the FCC webpage, and also there's a transit supportive development overlay website that the planning department has put together that is really outstanding. It has a ton of excellent information. It has updates. It's really well done. So kudos to planning for that, doing the heavy lift there. But if you could make sure as we're cranking back up and community councils are starting to meet again, just making sure that your councils are aware that that website exists, that this process is ongoing, that would be really helpful because we want to be sure that the public is mindful and has the opportunity to comment. There'll be multiple junctures for comment, and I think also an open house that's in the works. So kind of a pictorial guide to transit supportive development that people can walk through and then chat with the sponsors and the planning department and others and give feedback. So lots of touch points. I'm trying to do a really good job of making sure that the public is informed and has an opportunity to engage. I think that's it.
Thanks. Mr. Kirker, Jared,
Nothing to share to everybody at this time.
Ms. Vaughn.
Yeah, so I know that council is drafting for me, a project for myself and Member Constant and Member Johnson, a short-term rental tax, 5% is what's going to be in the draft. Revenues dedicated toward growing our municipal housing fund. So that's a project that I'm excited about.
Anna.
Yeah, I'll give just updates on things that are already in process. First is these two things that got postponed at our meeting Tuesday, but just so members are aware, AO 83 around cab fees. So that one was postponed to September 9th. So Felix is the other sponsor on that, partly because he was out of town. But we're also working through, and there's like differences of opinion, I guess, on whether and how much that convenience fee charge should be increased and whether that's a good policy. So it went to the Transportation Commission. They're wrestling with that as well. And then working with operators from multiple companies, I guess, across the industry to figure that one out. So September 9th is when that comes back. And then AO 85, the bar safety one, that was Mr. Constant's ordinance, and then I jumped on it. So we're working on an S version essentially to not even require registration, because I think we've heard the policy is successful, but the registration piece was maybe even still more red tape than is needed. So working on that. So you'll see that come back on the 26th. There's an S version. And then also the health department earlier this month, or maybe last month, presented on the cottage food ordinance. So basically implementing some state law changes, but also making it easier for small food vendors. Yarrow and I are working on that with the mayor's office and the health department. So that one, I don't remember exactly the time frame, but that'll get introduced soon. And I've also heard from various vendors, there's some feelings about that. So I would expect that one's gonna, so I don't know what the right answer is, but just to say that one is also moving forward. And then I think that's everything because we already covered the 50th. So thanks.
All right, Yarrow.
I just have a question. When are we going to get the official liaison? When are we going to know who's going to be the liaison for what?
Someday.
That's surreal.
So we sent it to the clerk on Tuesday, and so, sorry, we didn't get it directed out to members. There's still some questions about some committee seats that we're kind of chewing on that might change just based on availability and fit. And so we haven't quite zoomed in on that, but we'll ask the clerk to forward out the list. And the website, I think, has already been updated, right? No, it hasn't been. Okay, so I know Marisa was doing something. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, in lieu of us formally doing this, I'm going to read it out from the email that I sent. Sorry, it's just been a lot. So decisions were not necessarily all changing positions over there, but for ACDA, Zach Johnson and Yarrow Silvers. And then those are positions that essentially just need to be approved by the chair. So we'll move forward with that process.
Robbins has already been notified.
Yeah. Yeah, so I just mean it doesn't need to go on the agenda because we were chasing that down as well. Other members of that entity have to be appointed through a resolution or a memo. Anyway, Alaska Municipal League, Felix continues to be the board member. I'm the other liaison there. Anchorage Chamber, George Martinez. I didn't hear from another second member, but I think there's another seat potentially if anybody's interested. For Visit Anchorage, Yarrow Silvers and Jared Gerker. And again, I don't know if there's a formal process on our end. I would just check in with them on their boards. AEDC, Zach Johnson. And then I also had said if there's not another member interested in AEDC, that I would be willing to do that. But I'm just putting it out there before we formalize that, that I'm happy to step back if someone is excited about that. Chugaki River, obviously that's Scott Myers and Jared Gerker. Federation of Community Councils, that's always the chair and vice chair, so myself and Chris. NACO, the National Association of Counties, George Martinez. And I think there's potentially room for a second member there. No, there's not. Okay, so that's a single liaison. And then National League of Cities, that is Chris and myself. And so that was our full list of liaisons. There was some other task force on the website, but it was time limited, so we took that off. And if I'm missing any other organizations, let us know, but that's our list.
Okay, so my list, we don't have anyone left on the phone. I have a few things, a couple of them already underway. So we postponed briefly because Mr. Rivera's gone, the AO that's on postponed indefinitely, and the audience participation kind of narrowing. And the postponement matter, if you read it close, what we settled on was it is a non-debatable motion. However, the mover of the motion can have a few seconds to make the why. And if the mover is different than the original mover of the ordinance, then the ordinance mover can also make a very brief comment why they would oppose if that was the case. So it's kind of a best of both worlds scenario. Then we are just finishing up a conversation about guidance to the administration on tourism funding. You'll see something published here pretty soon that comes to the body that we will pass by resolution that goes to the administration as they finalize their approach to sending out the RFP for the next 10-year contract. And so, and the gist of that one is that we're looking at reserving 1% of the 4% for other projects as defined with a minimum contribution to the tourism venture provider, the tourism grantee or contractee. And so they would be held harmless from reductions except for if the tax actually went really far down. But we would have a cap and some of that money would then be usable for capital and other project development that supports tourism marketing. So then there is a public notice AO that was just introduced that you'll have on our next agenda, I think. I don't think we put it out farther, maybe we did. And that just sets to kind of harmonize some of the public notice requirements for various entities, including boards and commissions and other parties that have had some kind of loosey-goosey rules. It's a project that's been in development for 3 years over multiple administrations, multiple clerks. So it's coming soon. There's okay, September 9 is when we set that one too. And then Ms. Silvers and I are sitting in a room wrestling with attorneys and entities within the muni on a public records ordinance that has been drafted and was drafted between myself and Ms. Alatel to start. Yarrow joined the project and we're going line by line over the various kind of where we don't yet align with the administration on the outcome. And so we're trying to get to a point where the final product, we are able to identify all the areas where we do agree, get that introduced, and then kind of wrestle over some of those other points. Go ahead, question.
It was reported by a blog that the intent of that project is to make it more difficult for the public to receive or to access records. Can you maybe speak to that a little bit?
It's the opposite.
Okay, that's kind of what I thought.
It's the opposite.
Yep. All right. Thanks.
Yarrow.
I doubt that the blog writer even read the ordinance because it is
Clearly.
so blatantly untrue that it's ridiculous.
Yeah, clearly. Just nonsense. I mean, I don't know who you're talking about. I could make a guess. And if it's my name is on it, they're just making stuff up all the time. Just nonsense. And so, but yeah, no, she was coming on after, but we've been working on this for years to kind of bring together. We were filibustered so hard by the previous administration on records that should have been ours and records that should have been made public that we're over it. And so it doesn't matter who the mayor is, the administrations need to follow the law, and we're making the law really clear. And so, but we're still working together to iron out areas where we agree and areas where we might not. And then that's where the sparks will be, you know, when the item finally comes forward. And so, but we spent 2 hours and we only got through 2 pages of a 10-page ordinance. And so it's going to take a while. It'll be coming soon though, and the intent is to make it easier. And there is a line that's not yet in the draft that's coming that will make it very clear that assembly members can review records of this municipality. It can be in confidence with the attorneys, but they cannot withhold these records from us like they did under the previous administration. And so that's part of a solution that's coming here. Sunshine will come into this code. That's the bottom line. Anyhow, yeah, so I hadn't even seen that article yet. Thank you for the notice. I also have in draft form that's going to be coming forward soon, an update to the invasive species code. And so I have feedback from the folks who are doing the work out in the community who have asked for some updates. And they're still asking for more than I think we have the resources to provide, which would be some affirmative force to get out there and start doing some removals. I always thought we should have some kind of bounty, but we don't have money for that. And a tree bounty. And you cut your tree, we pay you for it. I don't know how we could do that, but I don't think we have the resources. But the Muni apparently maybe isn't implementing any invasive species, but we sure have a lot of them on our properties. And so we could be more assertive. So that's part of the conversation. Anna?
Yeah, just a question on that. Does it involve kind of retail sellers of plants, for example?
Yes.
Okay.
We already have that in our code, but the species that are banned were not sufficient because there are several cognates and there's no enforcement. So we have to kind of figure that as well. But the choke cherry, the May tree, they're all some subtle variant on that tree of life. And so they're continuing to proliferate. And so those are the general species that we want to see kind of get on the list that HOAs or developers aren't implementing in their developments. And so that's coming soon. And then I have a Track J update. I mentioned it before. I just sent you the maps, Matthew. Sorry I didn't get them to you sooner. And that Track J update, we created a park up there, but we're going to ask the assembly to dededicate and then rededicate with a slightly different boundary. And so that item will be coming before you soon. And then the last item that I have to brief you on is one that I am moving quickly on to get introduced. And this conversation might get a little spicy for all of us, but I want to propose creating, like we have the recycling surcharge at solid waste services, at the collection utility, no, at the refuse utility, I always forget, the one, the landfills, where we put a surcharge on tipping to fund the Healthy Spaces team, which would be getting out and ensuring our public spaces are cleaned up where we have service to provide. Because currently it's coming out of the parks budget and parks staff. And in the end, at some point, if we're managing waste, we should have waste management experts doing it. And so I'm proposing a solid waste surcharge that would fund the Healthy Spaces team, essentially. And so it just would be kind of, in my opinion, a closer correlation to the function, because we need to get away from our parks being seen as the team that is our refuse collection team. Anyhow, so you'll be seeing that coming pretty soon. I'm working on that with the administration. That's my list. So anything else, folks? Aaron?
Just that the Better Public Meetings resolution will be on the addendum for the upcoming meeting.
All right. Anyone else? Anna?
Since you brought up invasive species, this is the annual Weed Smackdown, which is not a marijuana thing. It is about invasive species. And the last few years, it's been, yeah, it could be. It's something that Park Foundation and Parks Department does. It is, I believe, at Chanchnu Muldoon Park on Saturday morning. Sorry, I'm going to it. I registered. I just have weed pull in Muldoon, but yeah, I'm pretty sure it's at Chanchnu Muldoon Park. 10:30 to 1:30 is the time frame, and it's literally just show up and sometimes it's bird vetch, sometimes it's the Mayday trees that we did in Takishla Park a couple of years ago or last year. So anyway, it's a fun thing. If you just like to pull weeds, it's a good time to have outside time. And even if you can't go to that event, if you know what invasive species are, it's a good place to learn and then go just start pulling bird vetch wherever it is, or any other species. As long as you can identify that it's actually an invasive species, you should get rid of it. Thanks.
So he's not here to speak to it, but also coming quickly before us is AO on onsite consumption. So we might find ourselves with a work session on that onsite consumption. It's a change to the marijuana licensing laws. Yeah, and so just worth noting here that that is coming forward and coming quick. And so a work session has not been requested, but we'll see. So then finally, I will conclude this meeting just by saying there is a circus happening just north of town for the next several days. And the fair is also, if you're going to go past it. And so everybody be safe and be careful out there and be mindful of where you are because things can change really quickly in an environment like this. Oh yeah, tomorrow is a no meeting Friday. There's nothing on our calendar and the branch staff has been offered to work from home tomorrow, just because, so people don't need to be here if we're gonna have any mayhem. So you can be here, but you don't have to be here. With that, then we will adjourn and we'll come back to the work next week. And thank you all.